Okay, everyone, right now, what I want to talk about is actor's language. And basically, what I've done is broken it down into two categories. Basically, it's method versus classical. A lot of people don't realize it, but they've both been around for hundreds and hundreds of years. But it was too dangerous to use method on stage at its early inception because it scared people. Sometimes the actors were too good, and people thought they were um, crazy. and so a lot of times they've switched back to classical. So let's get into it. Classical is a style of acting that means to work from the outside in. What I mean by this is usually physicality, costumes, makeup, something they do visible with their body, um, anything like that can actually trigger an emotion within inside of themselves. And it is one of the earliest forms of acting, like I said earlier. Um, the the thing was this is, and don't get it confused, because a lot of people think classical acting is strictly for stage, and that was the case for a while. But there are some very good actors that are out today that have been going since theater was or film was created, because they were taking actors from the stage, putting them in front of the camera. You can go back to movies from 1910 all the way up to 1950, where you're seeing a lot of theater style actors that they're kind of overdoing their reactions because they're used to playing to the back of the house or the back of the theater. And then once you put that camera in front of them, it was hard for them to, as I generally say this, to bring it down. So that's really what classical means. And notable classical actors, and again, I don't subscribe to just being classical or just being method. Once I give you the direction or the definition of method, you'll understand what I'm talking about. But here's some notable classical actors. Um, of course, a lot of you have seen A Clockwork Orange, who Mr. McDowell, who is right here in this, um, is a very fine actor and a great actor. He's been in many movies, television shows. He's been on stage, and he's just a fantastic actor. I had a chance to work with him, and he was just nothing but a fine human being and a great actor. Liam Neeson, he has a quote that he always says, don't bring your work home with you. So when you get to the theater, or when you get to the soundstage, make sure to hang up yourself on like a coat rack and go in and be a character. And then once you're done, leave the character there, put back on who you really are, and then go on with your day to day. And I understand that from being of both styles of acting. I've trained for 25 years in each style, so I find good in each of those styles. Sir Laurence Olivier, who's considered one of the finest actors, right before he died, he didn't like being called a classical actor. He said, sometimes I can feel it, sometimes I'm playing pretend. So there was a gray area between him and method and classical acting. And it goes to show that he was awesome. Method acting basically means to act from the inside out. Emotion dictates reaction. It's been derived from Stanislavski's The System, and it utilizes sense memory. Sense memory basically means we think of something, we remember a feeling, and then we use it later on when we need it for what's happening now. As far as when there's a camera on us, or even on stage, I made the mistake of understanding how to flip all these triggers inside me to get to a emotional an emotional higher ground when I was on stage, but I never learned how to turn them off. So a great performance ended up turning into a comical performance because I couldn't stop crying, and I had to go on to the next scene, which was going to be you're supposed to take place 6 months later, and it just looked like I was a big crybaby all the time. So when you learn method, you really have to understand that you're creating triggers from your past life and senses that you can turn on and turn off anytime. So it does go hand in hand with classical, but the means to getting there, one comes from the outside that triggers the inside, one starts from the inside and triggers the outside. So I'm just breaking it down very simple for you. Okay, so when you're working with actors, I find when I'm working with actors that maybe it's their first time, I tend to go method with them because I take a lot of time to rehearse with them. And you might be in this category too, where sometimes in method acting, a lot of classical actors didn't like them because on stage they would start thinking about things that had nothing to do with the play that they were in, and they were thinking about, a father passing away 10 years ago, thinking about, a pet that they had lost, thinking about love that they had lost. And the other actors didn't like that because you're supposed to stay in the scene with each other. So always keep that in mind too. Sense memory means to use a past personal experience for the character in the present. We kind of just went over that. Madonna she utilized this in the movie Evita, and it's a great scene where she's actually dying herself, but she remembered her mother dying, and she basically used that response or that emotion to elicit the response. She was supposed to be singing this beautiful song, and she couldn't get through it because she was so upset about that. She was crying and snot bubbles and tears. So it works, but you got to be able to maintain it and to kind of train it. Meryl Streep used it in Kramer versus Kramer. One of her boyfriends was one of the only actors only 5 movies he was ever in were up for Academy Awards, and won Academy Awards, and that was John Cazale. And during this scene, Dustin Hoffman told her to look at him at a certain point, and she looked at him. He was basically saying to her that he misses John too, and she started losing it. And it worked because she knew something was coming. You can't just throw it at people. Olivier and Dustin Hoffman did a scene in Method Man, and in this scene you can see a classical actor and a method actor basically working in unison with each other. It's a beautiful scene. Notable method actors: Marlon Brando. One of the first times we ever seen it on screen was on The Waterfront. Great movie if you ever pick it up. Dustin Hoffman, pretty much everything he does is method, from Lee Strasberg and the Stanislavski system. Al Pacino, one of his favorite teachers was Lee Strasberg, who started the American Playhouse, but also he started the Actors Studio, or became the artistic director for that. De Niro was the same way. They came out around the same time. Heath Ledger, which to me is very sad, because we never get to see his real total potential, and I think he would have been a perennial as an actor as he got older.